You're listening to the OCD Stories podcast, hosted by me, Stuart Ralph. The OCD Stories is a podcast dedicated to raising awareness and understanding around obsessive-compulsive symptoms. I do this through interviewing inspired therapists, psychologists, and people who have experienced OCD. Welcome to the OCD Stories. In this midweek special episode, I chat with licensed psychologist Dr. Katia Moritz of the Neurobehavioral Institute in Florida. And in particular, we talk about OCD and the holiday season, when excitement becomes a trigger for OCD, making values-based choices, therapy homework over the holiday, how family can support during the holidays, and much more. And these midweek special episodes, which go out at the end of the month on a Wednesday, are made possible by and in partnership with the Neurobehavioral Institute in Florida, or NBI for short. I will be interviewing different members of their clinical team on a range of topics. NBI specialise in treatment and programs for anxiety, OCD, comorbidities and complex cases. They also offer an intensive outpatient program and a residential program called the NBI Ranch, a supportive living experience that complements intensive treatment for anxiety and obsessive-compulsive related disorders. To find out more about their intensive outpatient services or the NBI Ranch, as well as to read some of their free information online about OCD via their blog, visit nbiwestern.com. So thank you to Katia for her time. As always, it's a pleasure to talk with her. And thank you to you guys for listening, as always. It means a lot. And I hope this episode helps you during the holiday season. Get the most out of it. Live by your values. Try to connect with your family. And hopefully it's a meaningful time for you. But I'm sure it may also be a very tough time. So do your best. And thank you so much for listening in 2023. It means a lot. And wishing you a wonderful 2024. Welcome back to the podcast, Katia.
Well, thanks for having me, Stuart. Great to be here and happy holidays.
Thank you. You too. And good to have you on board. And today we're also going to talk about OCD and the holiday season. And in the UK, we often just refer to it as Christmas, the Christmas holidays. I don't think we ever really call it the holiday season here. I could be wrong, but at least I don't in my family. So, I want to ask this really broadly because it's such a big topic and it will impact people with OCD in many ways. And for some, they might find it doesn't impact their OCD at all. But just anything you want to say initially about the holiday season and OCD?
Yeah. So excitement and stress are exacerbators of OCD. So if you think about end of the year, commitments, tasks for kids, school stuff, work-related issues, all the stuff that comes about when the end of the year approaches, that may be very impactful on someone's OCD symptoms. So let's expect that kind of excitement and stressors may exacerbate OCD symptoms. And so I would start with that. Know that you're going to have to fight harder, know that things are going to pop up. And there are other variables that we need to account for right now, which is going home for a lot of folks from college, from work, or from wherever they go back to their home of origin, which a lot of times was an OCD castle in the past. And so they have to really have a lot of conditioned response that they have to break. So a lot of our patients say, oh, I've been doing great in college. I go back to my mom's and my dad's house. And all of a sudden, I feel like my OCD is exploding, right? So remember that the brain has a memory of what it used to do at a certain place. And sometimes you will go back to that place and you're going to be triggered, or, OCD will feel like, oh, I should be doing this now. So be aware of that. And once those events happen, don't be mad at yourself. Don't feel like, oh, now I lost all my gains. It's just normal, and just address it with skills and go ahead and work on it. But I think what's important for us to consider is that holiday season is a time for us to be appreciative, to enjoy, to be able to be grateful for the people we have around us. And even when we are not around people, is to be grateful for being here, being okay, and being able to build a better year for us. Like next year, 2024 would be better, right? So if we're in a bad place, we are hoping for a better place. We're in a good place. We're appreciating that place and trying to maintain and grow from there. And many times when you're in that mindset of the holiday season, a lot of other emotions come about. And so that's why we hear that this is a dangerous time of the year, is because a lot of people start to really, beat themselves up or be very critical of themselves or be a little harsh on themselves. And then, more likely to experience depression, more anxiety, more desperation, more hopelessness. And so our goal today together here is to really talk to people about let's not let that happen. Regardless of how we're feeling, we're going to act as if we're going to go against the brain. If the brain is tricking us, we're going to try to take one moment at a time and enjoy what we can enjoy and just let the holiday either pass us by and then continue moving forward with our plans for next year, or try to change the way we're going to enjoy this holiday.
Yeah, true. And not see it as a massive obstacle in the way that's going to derail everything.
Right. It's another day. It's another month. It's another week. But you can make it positive and happy, or you could use that to beat yourself over. It's another year. I'm not better, or I'm hopeless. Nothing is improving. As opposed to look, it's just another month like any other month, and I'm going to continue on my path. And this is the message from me for the holidays, that don't give up. Continue on the path. You will be there. We will get there. It's just that the holiday shouldn't be a negative, a mark of failure, but indeed an inspiration of hope.
Yeah, good point. I think it's interesting what you said about excitement being almost an trigger for OCD, or exacerbating it. And it's not something that I really think about that often. But yeah, you're right. Because obviously when things are going good, I hear this from my clients all the time. They'll start to worry that, well, what happens if it suddenly goes bad? And now that they're worrying, then OCD hits them because they were ruminating or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, the state, like being excited about something, makes that thing important. So a lot of times I hear a patient is about to get married, and that day everything seems so overwhelming, and OCD is triggering all kinds of thoughts and behaviors and all of that. So we prepare for the good days and the bad days. It's almost like when people say, I drink to forget and I drink to celebrate. OCD jumps in the same way, right? So people will experience more symptoms. Actually, for people that have tics and Tourette's, excitement sometimes is even more of a trigger for tics and Tourette's than even, stressors. And, sometimes they can suppress with stressors, but as soon as they talk about something exciting or do something exciting, that's when, it really triggers. Like we were talking before about going to Orlando for the IOCDF conference. And it reminds me a lot of patients with tics, where the parents would not want to go to Orlando because they thought it was a negative, saying that their child was ticking so much more as the Mickey Mouse ears are coming out of the big, announcements of, you're approaching Disney World. The excitement will make someone tick so much more. And so the families are like, oh my God, I can't come to Disney World because it makes my child tick. Right. And it's hard to understand, why would you be ticking? You're not stressed. You're not sad. It's excitement. Excitement sometimes makes symptoms be exacerbated.
Yeah, true. Good point. And then also what you said about, for those that are going home for holiday, maybe to their family home, where, as you said, once it was like an OCD fortress. And it made me think of, my parents moved about 5 years ago. So it's nice now when we go back, because there's none of those memories of the really dark, horrible times. Whereas when I used to go back to that house, it would trigger me. And every Christmas was this bleak, really sad time because I couldn't get out of my own head. Whereas now I feel that I'm in a better place, but also I feel it less because the home's not triggering me, because I have no memories there.
Absolutely. And what I'm going to say is, for those who are going back to that place where things were really hard at one time, I would like to challenge them on thinking as wow, what a great opportunity for me to challenge myself to see how different I am.
True. Yeah.
Right. So instead of looking at it and saying, oh my God, I am terrible. I'm doing so poorly. I'm here at this house and feeling overwhelmed. To be like, yeah, I'm overwhelmed. Come on, this is the time I'm gonna do the exposures, do the things that I couldn't do before. I'm gonna try to do it now. So actually, we tell patients sometimes to have a remote session when they go back to their parents' house as an opportunity, to fight, right? And also, guys, remember, anxiety, OCD tries to rob people from good things, right? So seeing loved ones and enjoying positive things, it's something that OCD doesn't like because, it just takes away from the power, right? And so I think that when we talk about expectation violation, so your brain is like, well, I'm going to get to my family's house and I'm going to be depressed and it's going to be terrible. We want to act as like we're loving it and having a great time and like saying, I can manage this now. And that is really powerful because the fight, it's always there and we're always battling, but it's actually a very, very good battleground for you and not for OCD. OCD was getting at you when you had less skills or you were in a tough situation or you were younger, usually, right? Because you're only getting older. So it may be a time that you can actually say, now I'm much bigger, I'm going to get you. Right. It's almost like the neighbor that was really big when you're younger, and then you grow up and then you're much bigger than that bully next door. And you're like now scary to that bully. So see yourself as that. When you go back to your family's house, if you do, you are bigger now. That bully was bigger before, but now you're bigger and you're going to crush it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, like I'm not the same person I was last Christmas. I have more skills now. I have. Yeah, even if you're listening to this podcast, you're hearing things that you can apply, hopefully, that you didn't have last Christmas. So yeah, see it as a challenge, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's really the life of an OC-free person, is someone who's always looking for that challenge. Like, you have to brush up your skills, even though you may have been having less symptoms, your treatment worked and you're doing well, right? Let's say as an example, and you like feel like, oh, I'm going to go back and I'm going to be triggered. You look at this as well, what a great opportunity for me to practice. It's been harder and harder to practice because I am doing so much better. Go ahead and practice. And for those who are not in that position yet, and hopefully they will be in that position, right? Look at the other side of it. It will be nice to see your family. It'll be nice to be together and focus on those things that you can control, right? Because sometimes we are focusing on the things we can't control. And if we can't control, focusing on them just makes us more sad, more desperate, more hopeless. But maybe shifting for like, hey, maybe I'll try to help cook something, or I'm going to go and walk around the block, or whatever it is that you can do. Go ahead and challenge yourself in doing those things, because they will impact your brain and they will impact the future.
Yeah. Yeah, really good point. Like moving your focus onto valued activities, right? Like, yeah, can I help cook? Is there, okay, my uncle annoys me. I'm using this example. My uncles don't annoy me, but they have done before, I should say. But, my uncle annoys me. Okay, so maybe I avoid him a bit, and then I focus more time on chatting with my brother or my mom or whatever it is.
Right.
And yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I do think that anxiety and OCD makes us very narcissistic. Like if you ask a family, one thing they notice about people who are struggling with OCD symptoms is really about themselves. The brain is so consumed and so scared that they can't see anything else around them. So many times I ask parents this question: when was the last time your child asked you a question about you, how you're doing, or how is work, or how is grandma? And a lot of times they say, I've never heard that question. Right. So I think one beautiful thing to challenge ourselves is to go ahead and ask about other people, because even when we are struggling, hearing what's going on with other people is so much healthier. And it shows us that even when we're not well, we can still give. And when we give, we feel better and we feel connected. Right. So I really see that transition happen to people with OCD, where the world is not only about that fear and the thought and in their heads constantly, and they look so detached at times and they look so self-centered. When they actually act other-centered, even though they are in their head and the head is going at them, right, that they decided to say, yeah, I could see that's happening, but I'm going to go ahead and ask my mom a question. And for that person that is getting the question, it's such a wonderful feeling to see, wow, it's so nice that you're interested in something about me. I don't recall that question before. And it's funny because people don't notice that, but ask parents and family members, if they perceive their OCD family member as someone who is interacted or interested in them, and they will say, absolutely not. And it's sad because that's not true. They may be deeply interested in them. They really care tremendously about them, but they actually don't have the ability to show because their anxiety and OCD is taking front stage, right? And I think that that's how OCD is in my mind, and anxiety is like, it's so front stage that everything becomes background noise. And when we bring the background noise forward in this case, which is the love, the care, the relationships, OCD has to take a backstage because you are engaging with what's important.
Yeah, you less time to compulse and ruminate.
Right.
And I think also because that sort of upstairs brain, the intelligent part that's not offline, but being overpowered by the OCD brain. I think sometimes, like, before you go home, or if people are coming to you, make a list of questions. Like, here's 3 things I want to know about mum that I've never asked her. And because obviously in the moment, we're not going to be able to intellectually think of it because we're anxious, we're overwhelmed, but we can just then go to this list on our phone or on paper and be like, okay, let me ask this. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, like, to reframe the idea that is negative to feel overwhelmed, right? So when a bodybuilder or someone who's exercising, is struggling, but like lifting heavier weights is not a negative, it's a positive at the end. So although it may be difficult, lifting heavier weights makes someone stronger. That's natural. I mean, that's physiology. Yeah. So being at home when it's overwhelming and there's a lot of people and there's a lot of like variables and things to control, and we can't control those things, in a way that is actually helpful to strengthen the person. So when you're in a different situation, let's say you go to a party now because you're learning to socialize again or socialize for the first time ever, right? You are going to feel stronger because you're like, oh yeah, I managed okay at, Christmas. And now when I go to this person's house and there are 3 people, well, that's not as bad as it used to be for me. And so, creating more capacity during the holidays, it's actually a beautiful challenge. You're learning to do something that you don't have the experience or the ability to do all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, it's new territory, right? New things, new challenges that, you don't get the rest of the year or that often.
Right.
And families are very good at, even if you don't have OCD, families are typically very good at triggering you.
No matter what, it's the craziest thing. I always say it's beautiful on the picture, but like if you sit around, some stuff is going to happen, right? And some questions and all of that. And the idea of embracing that and actually taking it on stride, right? Like let it roll off your shoulder and be like, yeah, it's all good. Let's go, people. Let's have a good time. It's really the way you walk into the situation and having very low expectations. So you do have an uncle that is annoying. Expect the uncle to be annoying, but think that that's funny. Let me find something funny that my uncle does and says that I can make a joke after, So actually walking into situations with acceptance, but also trying to make it a bit more fun. And, sometimes when you're in a public situation, right, when you're struggling with your OCD a lot, it allows you to figure it out what is going to be more important to do. Because once you're alone in your house and, your OCD is calling on you, like there's no competitive schedules. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, either I'm going to go talk to my grandma and give her a hug or, compulse. It's like, no one is here and I'll feel so much better. I'm just going to get this. It's my last time anyway, right? That's what OCD tells you. Do one more time and you'll be okay. And so you're going to do one more. And so you do it. But when you are in those situations, when you put yourself in situations where you have to produce more, where you have to engage more, OCD is then like challenged and questioned. And also, if we are talking about like, we want to live a value-driven life, right? So that relationships are more important than listening to your OCD, that's very empowering, and it gives you a lot more strength to fight, because you want to be able to go give your grandma a hug, even though you're feeling contaminated or uncomfortable, or she's old, what if she's sick, whatever it is, the thoughts are. It allows you to say, you know what, that doesn't matter, because my value is relationships, and I have a family right now. And while my grandma's here, I really want to be able to do that with her. And I think that those things are very powerful. Remember, it's very important to find reasons to fight. The fight is really mighty and very difficult. It's hard because people that are seeing the struggle but have never fought side by side with someone with OCD, or don't have OCD themselves, it's very hard for them to understand how difficult this is. So expecting your family to understand or have all this compassion, for the struggle, is something that kind of like expectation may not be met, and then the holidays will be a sad place. But if we go in understanding that this is not about them understanding the fight, is about me fighting this fight, and actually being able to approach them in a different way, to enjoy them in a different way, to actually fight with my OCD so I have space to be with all of them, then is a different way. And the other part of it is that, like I said before, it takes away from that self-centered, pressure OCD puts in the brain, and you turn the camera, your eyes, right, your camera to the world, and that really supports the improvements that we want to make. But remember, guys, families, holidays, all of those things have been tremendously affected by symptoms, historically. If you think about years ago, many times the holidays have not been a good thing. Maybe this holiday is a difficult holiday. And, also for those who are in treatment programs right now and not going home, for those who are alone because they're afraid of a family member, or can't be together because their OCD is so loud and devastating, right? I mean, our heart goes out to you, but know that you can make this the last holiday that you're going to let OCD rule your life, right? That is a decision. How strong your OCD is not a decision that we can make. OCD could be pretty strong, but not allowing OCD to ruin the relationships in your life is a decision that we can make, and that we could actually take steps towards. And so, we always want to think that the holidays is a time for gift giving and connecting, but I think the biggest gift of all for someone with anxiety and OCD is to actually, commit to the battle, and to commit that this year I'm going to work really hard to have a better and better year next year.
Yeah, good point. And yeah, thinking about those people that are isolated from their families, be that inpatient or they're living outside, not outside, but maybe outside, but you know what I mean? In a
apartment. Oh yeah, there's some people who are living away from everyone and can't be visiting, and can't see anyone, and are making excuses to the family, pretending they have a migraine or they have allergic reactions or whatever it is, not to be with their loved ones, And my heart goes out to those folks, because, not only they're missing the holidays, they are actually reinforcing the terrorist and making OCD stronger, because they are avoiding that work. And I'm not blaming them, because it's a terrible condition. It's a terrible battle. It's a terrible fight. Yeah.
And I was just thinking about them, maybe, even if the family doesn't know about the OCD, just trying to reach out anyway and just send even a text, or just say, thinking about you, sorry I couldn't be there. Because then at least it's probably a bit of an exposure for them, but it's also connection. It's their value, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also think it's important, because OCD makes you only think about your experience, is to imagine how those folks are experiencing you not being there, right? That is hard for them. And I think that is only good if you use that as pressure against your OCD, to say, hey, I know this is really hard for me, but the only way to break through OCD is to go through it, right? So whatever impetus and whatever push we can give for someone to try to cross that bridge that connects them with life and family and holidays and parties and whatever it is that is out there, so they could actually get to it, even though it feels terrible at first, right? We know that eventually it's not going to feel this way. And eventually, even for the most annoying family or sibling that we have or whatever, even the worst of them is much better than your OCD. OCD is the worst of all the enemies right there, right? And so the idea of being able to battle that and actually cross that bridge to be closer to your family it's a great motivation for everyone that wants to get better, right?
True. Yeah, good points. And it was a question I wanted to ask you. So for your clients around, this is around homework, right? Or home practice, depending on what we want to call it. Are you allowing them to ease off over Christmas, or are you telling them to go as hard as they usually do? Like what are you setting for homework?
I don't think that there is one size fits all for that, right? Because for some folks, I feel that, they've been so hard on themselves, and you're saying, look, if something happens, it does, like, don't, just go through it. Let's get let's get this going. And for others, I see it as a great opportunity. And so we do make a holiday plan. Unfortunately, for some folks in our residential, they're not going to go home and they're going to be here for the holidays, which quite honestly, I get very sad that they're not with their family, but I'm really happy they are with us. Like, for Thanksgiving, I surprised them and showed up at the restaurant they were at. I think they were a little shocked. I don't know if it was a good surprise or a bad surprise, but our residential folks went on a turkey trot, and it was a 5K. And then when we had made this plan that they were going to show up, and I was on the line waiting with them to get in. And so it was very cute. And we had a great breakfast together. It was, really nice. And we do care, like, for our staff, it's important that when people are in that situation, that they feel like this is home for this moment. Right. But I have friends who are clinicians nowadays, but they were patients, and they tell the story about being, multiple years in a residential facility while everyone else was out in this world. They had missed all the holidays because they were either inpatient or residential, but eventually now they are part of that life and they're part of the celebration. So, sometimes we feel like when is a tough time in life, that is forever, that we're always going to be this is always going to be feeling this way. And gladly, the good news is that that's not the case, right? That, if this year is a tough year because, you're battling your OCD, or OCD is tremendously worse, or you didn't even know you have OCD and now you do, and you don't even know what to do about it, right? The good news is that it does resolve with the proper help, and it does get better. And it's a journey. So don't think that this is the end of your the destination. This is not the destination, but this is the beginning or the middle of your journey. And there's something to be learned. I mean, a lot of people with OCD, and I would say that you may even say that about you do a podcast for so many years now about OCD. I don't think you would have started this podcast many years ago if you never had OCD.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't have kept it going, that's for sure.
Exactly. It wouldn't make a sense. So, in a way, whatever it is that we are going through in life, we can make it something that adds a value to our experience, and it makes our lives more rich and more interesting. Not that we wish OCD on anyone, because it's just a very difficult condition. But, I always say to people, I'm really sorry you have it, but now it's your responsibility. How you're going to manage this, it's really going to be up to you. And that's the difficulty of the whole process, is that although the condition is this neurobiological condition that we don't ask for, the management of it is behavioral, and it's based on you. So that's different. It's not like a surgery that I close my eyes, you do the surgery, I wake up, it's over, I'm all better. I wish, oh my God, this would be amazing. But that's not what it is. This is a neurobiological condition that is treated by behavior.
Yeah, true. Good point.
Behavior changes.
Yeah, well, even with some surgeries, right, there's behavioral stuff in physiotherapy and all of this that you have to do post-surgery for months.
Absolutely. For months, years. I mean, like, it's hard. But, the jump start for OCD treatment is not even motivation. It's just actions, like knowledge about what it is, from patients and their families, because I mean, that's really the important message, is that families hold the key of a lot of the processes here if they are involved. If people are on their own in the world and they're independent, that's different because there's nobody reinforcing it. But the family process is so important for those who are battling together with other people by their sides, as spouses or parents, or, they're the parent of a child, whatever it is, their role is really crucial to what happens next. And that's the spirit of the holidays, is that, having people around us that want us to get better, they need to know what to do and how to do it so we can all enjoy life together. And the goal is to enjoy those holidays together and be able to not fight the entire time, fight a little, but enjoy the other times.
Good point. And yeah, I'm sure there's some people listening where they're like, I don't feel safe telling my family for whatever and fair enough. But for those that they do feel it's safe enough to talk to their families about OCD, and also, do you think it is beneficial to have those conversations if the family aren't already aware of, like, look, you can't reassure me, you can't do X, Y, Z. If I ask you if the turkey's cooked, you can't tell me.
Right. So like I have a philosophy in terms of treatment that I always believe, which is I can't imagine why, and unless you're dealing with someone who is so mentally unstable that is going to hit you because you say you have OCD, right? I think that the idea of you being okay with it makes others okay with it. And because it's something you don't choose, it's different that if you're like saying to someone, I'm using drugs, in their mind, you're like, oh, you're going out there and buying drugs and using drugs, right? So although it's a condition and an illness, people attribute more fault because you made that step, right? You had that choice. But I would say, I don't think that that's the case, but the idea of being able to accept that you have OCD and be able to be okay with it, and be able to not, overvalue that as you as a person, and, be able to educate people like, hey, listen, you don't have to call it OCD if you don't want it. I call it a tricky brain. I call it, my brain messes with me, and this is how it presents itself, right? And being able to educate people so they could support you. So because that, like, if someone walks into a place and they start asking for reassurance, it's only going to spiral down. If they walk in and they already know what they need to do, and the people know what they need to do, we level ground. We could go up from there and enjoy more, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with not walking into that rabbit hole together. And I think families and friends, and I'm going to count friends as family in a way, right? And they really want to help. And I have not, in my career, I really, in 34 years, have never actually disclosed to someone with the family, like help them disclose about their OCD, and encounter some very bizarre or angry situation. And if that happens, it's a good way to be able to explain, this is, you wouldn't be angry at someone because they told you that they had cancer or diabetes or any of those things. Why would you be angry that someone is sharing that with you? So the burden is not on the person that has OCD, is on that person that is reacting that way, so but the reality, we can't control that. And so if that person reacts that way, well, what is it going to do? What's the difference, right? And it's funny because what I've experienced over the years is that anytime someone decides to be more candid and more comfortable about it, they are very surprised with people's reactions. And this reminds me of a patient, I don't know, 20 years ago, who decided to go to someone at school and let them know that OCD was a problem. And the funny thing is that person's reaction was, oh my gosh, I do have OCD. And they happened to be our patients as well. So they actually found out they were having treatment at the same place. Which was very shocking, because the person that approached to tell the story always envision a terrible reaction and always envision that the other person that they had in mind that they wanted to tell because had a position of power would actually put them down or, somehow see them in a different light. And the funny thing is OCD became the unifying factor between those two people, right? So how often do we hear then someone says, oh my gosh, I don't know what that means. Like, do you wash your hands? And then when you explain, they're like, oh my God, this is fascinating how you're coping, what you're doing, and actually brings people closer. So being a little vulnerable at times, and this is, the holidays is a vulnerable time for people, right? Being vulnerable is a good thing because I think that the energy that we spend in hiding, and that's why I'm so proud of you and I love being here with you, is because I find that to be really the right approach. I mean, to be able to be honest, to be able to be comfortable and okay, because otherwise, how can we tell people to be okay if we're not okay? Right? I mean, it's okay. We can't, certain things in life we can't control. And if people are going to hold them against us, I don't want those people around me. And I'm glad that they told me that that's how they're going to behave because those are not my people anymore,
Yeah. Yeah, good points. I think, with anything, not just OCD, if we have shame around it, we're going to talk about it in a really like our body language will change. I'm closing my body language for anyone that can't see. Like we'll say it in a different tone of voice. They'll pick up on that. They'll feel awkward. Whereas if it's like, I have OCD, tricky brain, it does really bother me. This is how, then like you say, they might be like, oh, that's really interesting. Tell me about that. Like what's, how long is it? They'll be relaxed because you're relaxed about it.
Right.
It's hard to do that sometimes, but.
Absolutely. And the person you're talking to is not perfect. Just know that they may not have OCD, but trust me, they have something else. And if they don't, it's because they haven't discovered they will. There's no perfect specimen. Nobody comes to the world with nothing. And so it's very humbling to realize that, you have OCD and I have something else, and this one has other things. And that's what makes the world go around, is that we could actually be a support to each other. And I don't have to have your OCD to understand OCD is terrible. And the same way as if I have like diabetes, you don't have to, have diabetes to realize, wow, that must be really difficult.
Yeah.
Right. So those things are, not that different at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So then maybe bringing the family on board with like letting them know this is where I might ask you for accommodation and you can't do that sort of thing.
Right. And that's what love is, right? Like, how do we help people show they care about us is by being able to tell them where we're at and what's happening and see how they're going to react and coach them on what you need, and just say, hey, if I ask you questions about this, that's my OCD. I'm going to ask you to support me on not responding to those things. I'm going to work on myself not to ask, but sometimes it's tricky. I'm asking, trying to sneak that question in and just notice, and you can let me know, hey, you're asking that question, right? I mean, and it's not a question of schooling the person, but just supporting. And I think families love to be able to support it. If you ask people in general, one of the issues that people complain the most is that someone didn't tell them or someone didn't trust them to ask for the support and how, they feel when that happens. So if you were to compare how family and friends feel when they don't know you're struggling, is they feel much worse when they don't know and they feel like they haven't been helpful. They've done the wrong things. They have, made mistakes that they didn't know and they could have prevented. Then when they know what's going on and they have the opportunity if they choose to help. So when people don't know, you're kind of like negating them the opportunity to be there for you. And people most of the time really want to be there for you.
Good point. Yeah. They don't want to see you suffer. I like that. And then so just to wrap it up, just words of hope for the people going through this time of year. Like what would you say to them?
Well, approach this as an opportunity. Look at it as what you can do, not what you can't do. It's very, very easy to go on the negative and the beating yourself over the head or the mistakes or not good enough. It's something that we all could do, and it just doesn't bring the outcome that we want. But if we go more on like, I'm happy that I was able to do this small thing and then that small thing, and reinforcing that in our brain, the brain gets really responsive to that. So when we want to see a behavior happen in the future, we pay attention to it. So, if I was on time for Stu's, podcast today, I want to tell my brain, wow, that was great that you're on time, because that's going to make my brain want to be more on time. But if I wasn't, and I'm like, I can't believe this, I wasn't on time, Stu hates me, oh my God, my brain is going to go on that and make things more negative, and my brain is going to be focusing on that. So the idea is that, being more accepting of what it is today, where we are where we're supposed to be, but that doesn't mean that that's where we are going to be tomorrow. And the idea is that things do get better as we work on them. No matter what it is, things tend to get better as we work on them. And my word for the holidays is work on those things. Give yourself an opportunity, reach out to your family, give them the opportunity to show you that they care. Tell them how, because a lot of times people think that reassurance and giving you what you OCD wants is a form of loving you and making you feel better. And they are not able to recognize that they are partnering with OCD and not with you. So that's why it's so important that education to friends and families happen in the context of treatment, but also in the context of life. Right? So how many times someone who is an alcoholic would turn to someone and say, hey, I have an alcohol problem. If I go to your house, I'm not going to sit next to the drinks, and please don't serve me any drinks. Not that I'm going to take it, but it's easier for me at this point. So knowing where you are at this point in your life and treatment and approaching OCD that way may be very helpful, not only for you, but those around you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. People with addiction, alcohol addiction, are usually quite good at that.
Oh yeah, they'll tell you like, oh, it's not bothering me, but here's how I'm going to approach this. And you know what we feel? Proud. We are proud that they're fighting. We are proud that they're trying. And to be honest, I know as a clinician how proud I feel when my folks are trying. And even when they're not really succeeding, just the fact that they're going all in is so, so cool. I know the families will feel that same way, even if they are noticing, even if they see that there are things that they're doing, they're a little stuck, or, they're compulsing or doing things. But if you see someone really all in and trying and committed to it, it makes you feel that you have hope as well. So it's almost like a catching traction movement. You do a little bit more of that. You have the rewards and reinforcers. The brain is like, oh, I like this engagement. And that really helps a lot. Sometimes we talk to people that haven't had a holiday in 10 years. They haven't been out of their houses. They haven't done things. And it's very nice to see how very quickly they realize, wow, this is really nice. It's not overwhelming. It's actually nice to be able to do those things. I always say to people, once you get better, you can always get back to where you were. It's much easier to compulse and be sick. Like, it's much, you could go back. But I have never heard anyone in my entire career that said, oh, well, let me go back to where I was before. And then people are very surprised how much more control they feel, how much better they feel, how much less anxious by doing the anxiety producing things, how much less anxious they feel overall. And that's what my message of hope is, maybe it's okay to feel anxious, because that's the path to feel less anxious and feel better. So go for it.
Yeah, really good point. I like that. And then lastly, is there anything else you wish you could have said on this topic?
I would like to tell the families to prepare themselves and not be judgmental, and also to ask what their family members needs from them in this time, not to assume that they know. It's not helpful when we keep telling people, well, stop doing that. Don't do this. Why are you taking so long? Why are you in the bathroom for so long? Stop checking. It's fine. Those things really don't help the person, right? But to ask them, like, is there anything I could do to help move on? I see that you're stuck. Do you need any help? Like, I'm here for you. It's all right. Like, I'm here, right? I think that there's a way to approach people when they are struggling. And I feel like family members approach as you're choosing to be stuck or you're choosing to do this and therefore I'm mad at you. So I think people with OCD very often hear anger, disappointment, resentment, and more so that if they are in treatment, people like, well, you've been in treatment for this long, how come you don't know how to blah blah blah? And the idea is like, no, that they are battling a neurobiological brain-based condition. If you think you could do better, put yourself there and I want to see it, because it's not that easy. Right. So it really isn't. And you could tell people the basic things like, I'm going to ask you to quit drinking coffee and how hard that is. Or I want you not to have a certain type of food or not go to a certain activity that you've been doing for a long time. Behavioral changes in nature, very, very difficult to change. Imagine when they are powered by fear and anxiety and terrible emotions and your body feels so sick, right? How much harder that is. So I think that for the families, a better understanding of how their loved ones is experiencing the holidays in life allows them to, instead of being enabling and trying to fix things for the moment, it allows them to give love and support and encouragement for the fight.
Really good point. Great way to end. Well, look, thank you so much, Katia, for coming on, talking about this topic, and I'm sure it's helped many people hopefully have a better holiday season.
Happy holidays to all of you, and thank you so much, Stu.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast, and thank you to our Patreons who helped make this episode possible. And if you would like to find out more about Patreon and the rewards and benefits, then there will be a link in the episode description. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us with a one-time tip/donation, please go to theocdstories.com/support. All tips, no matter how large or small, are greatly appreciated. Please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. So thank you to NBI for supporting our work, and if you would like to find out more about their intensive outpatient services or the ranch, head to nbiwestern.com or the link will be in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.